Hi friends, how are you? I think you all are fine because we all are sparkling stars, right? Let me introduce myself. I am D. Ravan, pursuing class 11 in Bi.PC stream from TTWREIS COI Kinnarsani. My parents are Mr. Nanda and Mrs. Vijaya. My energetic and dynamic principal sir is Janu Nayak sir and my mentors are Mr. Ashok sir and Miss Bhargavi ma'am. Today I am going to start our session with a small story. Once upon a time there was a youngster named Sanjay. He loves oceans and marine life very much. One day he went to scuba diving. He entered the water and started observing beautiful fish and coral reefs, and he started moving forward. Then after some time he suddenly realized that he missed the direction to the shore and his oxygen tank was running out of gas. Then he immediately went to the nearby island, and then he started feeling very tired and hungry. Why do you think like this? Because energy is more consumed in the swimming, right? So he looked around and saw a tree with full of fruits. He immediately went to the tree and grabbed some of fruits, and then he started eating them. Then he started feeling energetic. We all eat food every day because we need energy to do our daily routine like walking, talking, studying, etc. We all know that plants are primary producers of the food. Then had we ever thought how plants reproduce and how do they give fruits? No, right? So today our topic is sexual reproduction in flowering plants. Sexual reproduction in flowering plants. Friends, observe this. What is the most attractive part of this plant? Flower, right? Can you guess the parts of flower? They are petals, sepals, thalamus, androecium, gynoecium, and etc. Now, can you guess only the essential parts of flower? They are androecium and gynoecium, right? Now, androecium is the male reproductive part of a flower and gynoecium is a female reproductive part of a flower. Androecium contains pollen sacs which contains pollen grains. Pollen grains are the male reproductive gametes. And gynoecium, let us see the structure of gynoecium. This is the structure of gynoecium. It contains stigma, style, and ovary. Ovary contains ovules in it. Today we are going to learn about embryo sac formation and pollination and double fertilization. Friends, where do you think embryo sac is formed? In the ovule, right? So let us see the structure of ovule. Yes, this is the structure of ovule. See, ovule contains funicle, hilum, micropyle, micropylar pole, integuments, nucellus, and chalazal pore. Now, let us study each and everything in detail. Funicle. Friends, do you know when we are at fetal stage in our mother's womb, there is a structure which provides nutrition to the fetus from the placenta of mother? Do you know what it was? Yes, it was umbilical cord. Likewise, in plants also there is a structure which provides nutrition to the developing ovule. It is nothing but funicle, and the point where funicle and ovule attach is called as hilum. Hilum is remained as seed scar after drying of seed. This you can see clearly in bean seed, right? And these are integuments. Integuments are nothing but the protective layers of the ovule, and the mass of cells embedded within the integuments are called as nucellus cells. Micropyle is a small opening in the integuments at micropylar pole. Now, the opposite pole to the micropyle is called chalazal pore. Friends, now let us see the formation of embryo sac. It contains two steps. One is megasporogenesis and other is female gametophyte formation. Let us see megasporogenesis. In the nucellus at the micropylar region, one cell of nucellus is having dense cytoplasm and prominent nucleus, which is converted into archisporial cell. What cell it was? Archisporial cell. This undergoes divisions and gives rise to one parietal cell and one sporogenous cell. What are they? One parietal cell and one sporogenous cell. Parietal cell after divisions joins the nucellus, but sporogenous cell is modified into MMC. What is MMC? Means it is megaspore mother cell. Why it is called mega, friends? Can you guess? Because in the nature, all the oogamous female gametes are bigger than the male gametes. So female gametes are called as mega and male gametes are called as micro. Now why it is called mother cell? Because sporogenous cell is a cell which undergoes and gives rise to the new cells. So it is called megaspore mother cell. Now let us see. This megaspore mother cell undergoes meiotic divisions and forms 4 haploid megaspores. The formation of 4 megaspores from one nucellus cell is called as megasporogenesis. What it is? Megasporogenesis. Now let us see the formation of female gametophyte. In most of the plants, out of these 4 megaspores, only one cell is active and other 3 gets degenerated. So this process of developing only one megaspore out of 4 megaspores is called as monosporic development. What it is? Monosporic development. Because only one cell is developing, right? Yes, so it is called monosporic development. It is having, this monosporic developed cell is having dense cytoplasm and prominent nucleus. This nucleus undergoes divisions and gives rise to 2 nuclei which moves to the 2 polar opposites. Now these 2 sequential divisions takes place and 2 sequential divisions takes place and forms 4 nucleated and 8 nucleated embryo sac. Here remember, what is the number of nuclei we are having? It is 8, right? So now after forming, see up to here the nucleus is only undergoing divisions, but not the cell is not going under divisions. So this kind of divisions are called strictly free nuclear divisions. After free nuclear divisions, the cell wall starts forming and forms antipodals, central cell and egg apparatus. Now let us see each and everything in detail. Antipodals, 3 cells grouped at the chalazal region of the embryo sac are called antipodals. These are the smallest cells of embryo sac and these gets degenerated before or after fertilization. So these are called as vegetative cells of the embryo sac. Central cell is the central cell and it is large in size. Egg apparatus, these are 3 cells grouped at the micropylar region of embryo sac are called as egg apparatus. They contains 2 synergids and 1 egg cell. Egg cell is haploid in condition. Now synergids are having cellular thickenings at the micropylar end called as filiform apparatus. What are they? Filiform apparatus. These guides the pollen tube into the embryo sac. They absorb the nutrition from the nucellus and gives nourishment to the embryo sac. Now inside the ovary, the female gametophyte is ready to get pollinated or to get fertilized. Now externally, there should be taken a process of transferring male gametes from the anther to stigma of female. This process of transferring pollen grains from male to female is called as pollination. Here pollination could be of 3 types. They are autogamy, geitonogamy and xenogamy. Now let us see. Autogamy means the transferring of pollen grains from anther to stigma of same flower of same plant is called as autogamy. Friends, did you hear our elders saying marrying relatives is not good for future generations? Yes, because they are not resistant to diseases. So and there is no genetic variation. Same like that in autogamy also there are no genetic variations. Let us see about geitonogamy. The transfer of pollen grain from anther to stigma of different flower of same plant is called as geitonogamy. Here this is functionally geitonogamy, but it is genetically against self-pollination, which is nothing but autogamy. In this also there are no genetic variations. Now let us see about xenogamy. Xenogamy means transferring of pollen grains from anther to stigma of different flower of different plant of same species is called as xenogamy. This is the only kind of pollination which brings out genetic variations. Why do you think like this? Because for example, if I had a mango plant in at my home which is having high yield but it is not resistant to pest, and there is another mango plant in my sister's home which is having low yield but high pest resistant. So if we cross pollinate these two plants now, the future saplings or future generation of these plants will be having high pest resistance and high yield. So this is the best kind of pollination. Friends, do you think now the plants will move from one place to another to complete pollination? No, right? Because plants are rooted in the ground. They are not motile, they are sessile. So there must be some agents who completes the pollination. So these agents are called as pollinating agents because they are completing the process of pollination. Plants use two kinds of pollinators. They are abiotic agents and biotic agents. In abiotic agents there are wind and water, and in biotic agent there are insects, birds, bats, reptiles, animals and etc. Now let us see about abiotic agents. What is meant by abiotic agents? The pollinators which do not have life are called as abiotic agents. Now let us see about wind pollination. Yes, wind pollination is called as anemophily. In wind pollinated flowers are having small or dull petals and they do not have fragrance or nectar. Because why do you think like this? Because there is no need for the flowers to attract the pollinators, right? So they are not having fragrance or nectar, and the pollen grain is very light in weight and they are non-sticky, so they can travel in wind currents the more distance, and they are produced in enormous amount. So this increases the rate of fertilization. The stigma are having hairy structures. You can observe here, this is the stigma of a corn. Example, grasses and corns are the example for wind pollinated plants. Here this hairy structure is nothing but the stigma. It is designed like this because it can easily catch the pollen, and you can observe the pollen grains or the anther in corn. See how enormously they are produced in more amount. They are produced in more amount because see, always the direction of wind might not be the direction of stigma. So occasionally when the direction of wind is towards the stigma, then at least some pollen grains will reach the stigma and completes the fertilization. Here this ovary contains only one ovule in corn. Now let us see the second pollinator, abiotic pollinator. It is water. Pollination through water is called as hydrophily. What it is? Hydrophily. And most of the plants do not use this kind of pollination. Only 30 genera of plant use hydrophily and most of them are monocots. Hydrophily is of two types, epihydrophily and hypohydrophily. Epihydrophily means the pollination in the water at the surface level is called as epihydrophily, and hypohydrophily means the pollination under the water is called as hypohydrophily. Epihydrophily is seen in plants like Valesneria, tape grass and etc. In this, the flowers are reached to the surface of water through a long stalk and pollen grains are released into the water. These pollen grains are moving through the currents of water passively. And hypohydrophily is seen in plants like Zostera, is nothing but seagrass. And okay, wind pollination works okay in open lands. And do you think wind pollination works in places like tropical rainforest? No, right? Because there are more diversity in plants, so it do not works in tropical rainforest. Here we call flowering plants as angiosperms. Why angiosperms are highly successful? It is undoubtedly because their tendency to depend on the animal pollinators to transfer their pollen, right? Now let us see the animal pollinators. Who are these biotic pollinators? The pollinators which are having life are called as biotic pollinators. In this, what animals comes into mind when you think of a pollinator? Bees, right? Bees are, I call bees a professional pollinator because they collect the pollen grain throughout the day. Why do you think bees collect pollen throughout the day? Because we need proteins to grow and develop. Likewise, baby bees also need protein to grow and develop. So pollen is the only source of protein bees are having. So they collect pollen grain throughout the day. So, and not only bees, they are critical pollinators, but other insects like butterflies, fleas, moths, etc. are also insect pollinators. And all the flowers pollinated by insects produce a sweet smell, but the flowers pollinated by fleas and moths produces a foul smell. Do you know Rafflesia and Titanarum, the world's largest flowers? These produces meat rotting smell to attract the pollinators. Now the pollination through insects is called as entomophily. What it is? Entomophily. Pollination through birds is called as ornithophily. Here birds do not have sense of smell, so the flowers may or may not have the sense of fragrance, or but they are having rich amount of nectar, because nectar is the only substance birds take from the flowers. And the bird pollinated flowers are having bright colors which the birds can easily see in the green foliage of background. Pollination through bats is called as chiropterophily. Friends, what is the time bats roam? Night. So do you think the bat pollinated flowers are having bright colors to attract the bat? No, right? Because bats cannot see the colors in dark. But instead of having great pigments, they are having strong fragrance and rich nectar, which is more sweeter than animal or insect pollinated flowers. Because see, bat is a mammal. If honeybee needs 1 ml of nectar, bat needs more amount of nectar, because bat is a mammal, it needs more energy. So the bat pollinated flowers are having more nectar and more fragrance. Fragrance is useful for bat to detect the flowers in the dark. Now not only these animals like squirrels and reptiles are also participate in the pollination process. Pollination through squirrels is called as ophiophily, and pollination through squirrels is called as therophily, and pollination through reptiles like snakes, lizards is called as ophiophily. Now how flowers are? Friends, do you think always the pollinator goes to the flowers to collect the pollen grains or the nectar? No, because the flowers are also intelligent. Do you know the orchid flower, which traps the insects to come near them and to complete their pollination, which completes their life cycle? Now successfully pollen grains are reached to the stigma through pollination, and stigma is a gelatinous substance which contains sugar solutions. When the pollen grains fall on the stigma, they absorb the nutrients from the pistil and starts forming pollen tube. You can observe this by performing a simple experiment. First, take some sugar solution and take a clean slide. Add a few drops of sugar solution on the slide. Take anthers of freshly dehiscensed anthers, pollen grains, and leave this for 10 to 15 minutes. And after 10 to 15 minutes, if you observe this slide under microscope, then you can observe the growth of pollen tubes. And when the pollen tubes enter, we already discussed, there is a small opening in the integuments called as micropyle. Through this micropyle, the pollen tube enters into the embryo sac. We already discussed that synergids help to guide in the embryo sac to the pollen tube. Now synergids guides the pollen tubes into the embryo sac. Pollen tubes contains 2 male nuclei. These are released into the synergids, and 1 male nuclei is taken by female egg cell, which is haploid in condition. The fusion of male and female gametes is called as syngamy, and other second nuclei is taken by 2 polar nuclei of the central cell. The fusion of 2 polar nuclei and 1 male nuclei is called as triple fusion. Triple fusion and syngamy together are called as double fertilization. After double fertilization, the ovary is converted into fruit, the pulpy structure, and the ovules are converted into the seeds. These are the seeds, nothing but the ovules. So friends, up to now we discussed a wonderful topic, but do you know nowadays there was something happening called as pollination syndrome, in which the honeybees are leaving their hives and never being returned to their hives, and they are not actively participating in the pollination. So if we continuously lose bees like this, we lose many of the flowering plants. If we lose plants, we lose food. If there is no food, we all will extinct. So I request everyone to plant at least one flowering plant at your home, which helps the pollinators, which keeps our environment, our mankind very clean, green and healthy. Thank you.